I'm Anil Kumar. Welcome to my series on fractions. In this video, we'll discuss how to add fractions. Well, there are a few prerequisites which you need to know before we get into addition of fractions. Well, as a general note, to add fractions, we should have same denominator. So a fraction is given with a number in the numerator, the number on the top, and another number in the denominator, the number in the bottom, right? So numerator and denominator. To add fractions, we should have the same denominators, right? Just as in 2 over 5 plus 1 over 5, the denominator is 5. So we can directly add the numerators and get our answer, right? So the first one here is very simple. Since we have the same denominator, we call it as common denominator. It remains same, 5, 5. You can add the numerator, 2 plus 1, that is, right? And what do you get? You get 3 out of 5. So that is the result of this addition, right? 2 out of 5 plus 1 out of 5 is 3 out of 5. To give you a visual concept, the idea is kind of like this. Let's say we have a bar which is divided into 5 equal parts, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So 5 parts. We are adding 2 out of 5, that is to say, we have this fraction is 2 out of 5, correct? So that means 2 out of 5. And the other one we're talking about is 1 out of 5. That means this portion, correct? So this is 1 out of 5, and the other one is 2 out of 5. Now you can see each one is 1/5. So each one is 1/5. So when you add 2/5 and 1/5 means 3/5, right? 3/5. So the denominator remains the same, and the numbers in the top, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5. Does it make sense to you? So that is how it goes. So it is important to get the denominator same. Then we can directly add the fractions as shown, right? So this denominator, we call it common denominator. Okay, so let's get back to our strategy. To add fractions, we should have the same denominator. I think that point is absolutely clear, right? Which is shown here. The second point here is write equivalent fraction with lowest common denominator. Now, let's get to the next example. We have to add 2 over 5 and 4 over 15. Now, they do not have the same denominator. So it's not something like this. One is like 2 out of 5. The other one is 4 out of 15, right? But to add them, we need to have the same denominator. How do we get the same denominator? That's a big question. Now the strategy is to have an equivalent fraction with lowest common denominator. So the denominator could be 5, 15 could be the lowest common denominator. Well, we could make denominator as 30 also, but what's the point? Lowest common, right? So common denominator, let's understand this term. Common denominator and lowest common denominator. Let's look into multiples of 5. So multiples of 5 are 5 times 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on, right? Multiples of 15 are 15, 30, 45, and so on. What you notice here is that 15 is the lowest common multiple of these two, right? So sometimes we call this as lowest common multiple, right? But when we add, we use the word lowest common denominator, since it is in the denominator. However, LCM and denominator is kind of same thing, right? So we may call this as LCD, lowest common denominator. But effectively, it is a common multiple, lowest amongst them. Now, we could Write 2 over 5 with an equivalent fraction with denominator as 15, right? So that is the whole idea. How could we do it? So we have 2 over 5 plus 4 over 15. I could multiply both 2 and 5 with 3. So we could multiply this by 3 over 3. Now 3 over 3 means 1. Multiplying by 1 doesn't change the number. Therefore, it is called equivalent fractions. You get an idea, right? So we could write this as equal to, when you multiply, 3 times 2 is 6. We get 6 over 15 plus 4 over 15. Now it is a case very similar to this. Only thing is that every unit is 1/15th. So when you add, you get 10 over 15. So what you get here is 6 plus 4, which is 10 over 15. You get an idea, right? So that is what you get. So this is our second step, which is write equivalent fractions with lowest common denominator. Got it? Now the third point here is then add, which we did, and write your answer in lowest terms. Now what is lowest terms? Now lowest terms means, see here, we multiplied by something to get an equivalent fraction, a higher term. Now we could divide. I could divide this by, what is common factor? 5. So I could divide both by 5, correct? So what we get here is 10 divided by 5 is 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So we get 2 over 3, which is the best answer for the given question. You understand? So these are the steps involved to add fractions. Perfect. Now here is another example. Now here in the denominator we have 3 and 4. Now what is the lowest common denominator? Well, if you look into the multiples of 3, it is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And the multiples of 4 will be 4, 12, well, we got 12 as a common multiple. Do you see that? So we could write both as something over 12. Now how do I get 12? To get 12, we could multiply the first term by 4 and the second term by 3. That is these denominators, right? Do you see? So that gives you kind of a hint. So what we could do here is that multiply each term of the first by 4 over 4, right? So that is the first one. And to the other one, we'll multiply by 3 over 3. So if you do that, you get 4 times 2 as 8 over 12 plus 3 times 1, which is 3 over 12. And when you add, you get 11 over 12. Now 11 over 12 does not have any common factor, so it is the lowest term. Perfect. So what you have seen in these 3 examples is all the strategies which you need to know for solving such questions. That is adding fractions, right? So we have an example where we had the common denominator same, right? The other one where we multiplied only one of these terms to get the same denominator, and the third one we had to multiply both by something to get a common denominator. But key here is to get lowest common denominator, add them up and then write as the lowest terms. Now I hope this strategy is absolutely clear. I'd like you to apply this strategy and solve some questions. So we have a lot of questions for you to practice. Take it as a worksheet, right? So here, DEF. 1 over 6 plus 2 over 3. 3 over 4 plus 4 over 5. 2 over 3 plus 3 over 8, right? So these are the next 3 questions. And then we have some more. 1 plus 2 over 3. 5 over 6 plus 2, 3 plus 5 over 6. Now in this particular case, we are adding a whole number. So I'll show you 2 different techniques of adding them. When we have 1 plus 2 over 3, for example, you could write this as 1 whole and 2 over 3. that is fine. You could do that, right? So that is one way of writing this addition. This is mixed number, but that's the correct strategy, right? So that's one way you could do it. The other way to do this is treat 1 as like 1 over 1, right? And then the question here becomes 2 over 3. Now using the previous strategy, we'll multiply 1 over 1 by 3. So we could write this as 3 over 3. That is also 1, right? Same denominator. And this becomes 2 over 3. So when you add, you get 3 as the lowest common denominator and 5 over 3, correct? Now you can see 5 is bigger than 3. So it's an improper fraction. So most of the time, we do not write answer as an improper fraction, right? We convert this to mixed number. So if you convert that, how do you convert that? The steps are kind of like this. So here is a small review on fractions. We'll divide 5 by the number 3. So it goes one time and the remainder is 2. So you get 1 whole 2 over 3. So we get the same answer which we started with. Perfect. So that is a better way of writing. Straight away, a whole number could be just added. So these are the two questions for you. So you could just write it in the mixed form as I have given you, right? Now the next page, we have to add fractions. There could be more than 2 terms. We could have 3 terms, 4 or more. So here is an example for you where we'll have 3 terms. Now, I would like you to pause the video, copy all these questions, try them out, and then look into my solution. Perfect. So let me begin with solution of those questions where we left, right? And I hope you get all of them right. Okay, so let's begin with our solution set. So we'll again go back to D, E and F. So we'll start from here now. So I hope you have understood this strategy. Our first step is to write both the terms with the same denominator, and we call it lowest common denominator, and then we are going to add. Now if 6 and 3 are in the denominator, then what could be the lowest common denominator? Well, the multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9 and 6, 12. So we have already seen 6 is the lowest common denominator. So to get 6 here, what should I do? I should multiply 2 over 3 by 2, right? Both of them. So we could write this as 1 over 6 plus 2 over 3 times, we have to multiply 3 by 2 to get 6, right? So we'll multiply by 2 over 2. 2 over 2 is 1. So it doesn't change the fraction. We get equivalent fraction, which is 4 over 6. Now we can add 4 and 1, and the denominator always remains same, right? Don't make it 12. So that's how we are going to add. Clear? Now in this case, we have nothing in common between 4 and 5. And the lowest common denominator here is what? So let me write down lowest common denominator equals to 4 times 5, 20 in this case, right? So we have to make both denominators as 20. How can I do it? We could write this as 3 over 4 plus 4 over 5. To make it 20, I have to multiply this by 4 over 4 and that by 5 over 5. That is 1, right? So we get 15 over 20 plus 16 over 20. And when you add them up, 5 and 6 is 11 and 1, 31 over 20. Now that is improper fraction. You may like to divide it. 20 goes one time, and when you take away, you get 11 over 20, right? So that is how you could write this answer as a mixed number. So you can actually check my videos on how to find LCM. So I'll provide you a link for 2 things. One, how to find LCM or lowest common denominator, both are same thing. Second, how to work with improper fractions. Okay, so check those links to get some practice. Next one here is 2 over 3 plus 3 over 8. Again, the common denominator, let me write down here, LCD should be equal to 3 times 8 as 24. So to make it 24, I'm going to multiply the first term by 8, the second term by 3. Do you see how we do it? So we have 2 over 3 plus 3 over 8. The first term should be multiplied by this term, 8. So both numerator and denominator by 8, the other one by 3. So you get 8 times 2, 16 over 24, plus 3 times 3, 9 over 24. Correct? So 24 is the denominator. Numerator is 25, which is 1 more than 24. So 1 whole, 1 over 24 becomes our answer. Perfect. So that is how we get the addition of two fractions. So let's move on and take up the next three. So this was simple. If you have a whole number, don't think much. Write 2 whole 5 over 6 and 3 whole 5 over 6 as your answer, right? Now, if you want to write this as improper fraction, the way to convert is like this. 2 times 6 plus 5 goes in the numerator. You can do 2 times 6 plus 5 over 6, right? So that is how you convert mixed numbers into improper fractions. So that is 12 plus 5 is 17 over 6. If you want to write like this, right? You could do it. Or alternate method is you could write with the same denominator. So think 3 as 3 over 1. To get 6, I have to multiply both by 6. So I get 6 times 3, 18 over 6 plus 5 over 6. Correct? 18 over 6 is 3, right? So when you add them up, 18 plus 5 is 23 over 6. You get that answer. Perfect. Which is 3 times 6 is 18 plus 5 is 23. So you could do either way. So what we learned here is alternate methods. To add fractions. Correct? And also how to work with improper fractions. Correct? So we learned these two things with the help of these examples. Now the last page here has addition with 3 terms. Now how do you find LCM for all these? 2, 10 and 5. I've also discussed a technique which we learned long time back and is very useful. 5, 10 and 2 are the 3 numbers in the denominator. We want the lowest common denominator. So let's factor out the common factors. I could divide this by 5, 5 times 1, 5 times 2, but I cannot divide 2, so I'll leave it. Now 2, 2, we could again take factors here and further find factors. So if you cannot divide 1 by 2, just write 1 as such, but 2 divided by 2 is 1, this 2 is also 1. So the lowest common denominator is actually the product of all these numbers. Perfect. So you get 5 times 2, anything times 1 is 10. So here the lowest common denominator is 10, which was easy to see from what we had given. But that's an interesting method. So I'll provide you with a link to do this practice. This is very effective when you're working with bigger numbers. So we know here that the lowest common denominator is 10. To make 10, I'll multiply these by 2, right? So I'll multiply these both by 2 and these by 5. Do you understand? So if you do that, I'm doing a shortcut here since you now know the method, right? 2 times 2 is 4. We could write this as 4 over 10 plus 3 over 10 as such. And here 5 over 10. Correct? So now we can add them up. So 4 plus 3 is 7 plus 5 12 over 10, which is 1 whole and 2 out of 10. This could be further reduced and written as 1 whole. Simplify this as 1 over 5. So you could write it like this also. Does it make sense to you, right? Slightly more complicated, but I hope it makes sense, right? Now let's look into the next one. Now here we have 2 wholes and all this. So if you prefer, you can keep 2 aside, 2 whole, right? And you can add only these numbers, right? So we'll do that. So in this, the strategy here is to take 2 whole plus we'll add this. To add this, I have to make common denominator. So the lowest common denominator here is 6. So I have to multiply these by 2. So we get 5 over 6 plus 2 over 6, correct? So we get 2 wholes plus 5 plus 2 is 7 over 6. Now 7 over 6 is improper fraction. I could write this as 2 plus 1 over 6. Now 2 plus 1 is 3. So we could write this as 3 times 1 over 6. Slightly complicated, but well, think about it. And once you have practiced a lot, that will make sense to you. For the beginners, it might be slightly more complicated, correct? Okay, now let's do the last one. Now, you could actually take this as your practice test question. So you can actually pause the video, solve this, and then look into my solution. What is the lowest common denominator? Well, you could use the ladder division, which I used here, to find lowest common denominator. So let's practice. We have 4, 8, and 3. Well, I could divide these 2 by 4. So 4 times 1 and 4 times 2. Since I cannot divide 3, I'll just leave it as such. Now multiplying these, what do you get? You get 4 times 2 times 3, which is 24. So the lowest common denominator is 24. So sometimes we can also write common denominator with a straight line and the number underneath, instead of writing them separately. It doesn't change, right? Even in the answer, we are going to get 24 in our answer. Does it make sense to you? So I hope now the things are coming together. So at an advanced level, you could actually do addition in the fashion I'm showing you now, right? So these are kind of steps which you will soon graduate to as you practice addition of fractions. Now to make this as 24, 6 times 4 is 24, so the first term should be multiplied by 6, second term is 3 times, and this term is 8 times, right? So that should make sense. So numbers you get from one of these. Do you get an idea, right? So that's how we work. So 6 times 3 is 18, right? So we get 18 here for the first one. 3 times 3 is 9 from the second one. 8 times 1 is 8. And now we can just add them up, correct? So 8 and 8 is 16 plus 9 is 25. 5 and 2, 2 plus 1 is 35, correct? So you get 35 over 24. Now 35 over 24, you could divide 35, do it like this. 35 divided by 24, 1 times. Normally it's a simpler division. 9 is the remainder, right? So 1 whole, 9 over 24 is your part solution. But you see 9 and 24 also have 3 in common. So I could write this as 1 whole, dividing by 3, I get 3 over 8. Does it make sense to you? So that is how we could actually do it. So I hope this exercise helps you to get the concepts in place. Practice adding fractions from your notebook, and also try subtraction, right? So if you change this to minus, operation is similar. Only thing is you'll have to subtract rather than add. So I hope that makes sense. Feel free to write your comments and share your views. If you like and subscribe to my videos, that'll be great. Share my videos with your friends. Thanks for watching and all the best.